Hi, everyone. Thank you, Ian. Now I don't have to say everybody's names and butcher them. Thank you, and welcome to the blockchain data storage panel. This is a very exciting and timely topic today with the use cases becoming more and more prevalent as we go on. Things take a long time when we're talking about data management, and I'm really excited to talk about this topic today with the news last month with Ava blockchain working with the California DMV to really bring forward a really large project reaching millions and millions of Americans to really benefit people's lives and use data in really powerful ways that we haven't seen before. And I think that's going to create some big changes around the norms and people understanding the technology. We're going to have shorter lines in the DMV for Californians and less fraud. And that's just the beginning of what this technology can do for data. And so we have three great panelists on stage today with different backgrounds in healthcare and Oracle work, and actually a nonprofit tool that our organization. So I'm going to let them give a short introduction as they are their own subject matter experts. Kat, do you want to start?
Cool. Yeah, so I'm Kat. I'm the founder of Tamarind Health, and we have built a privacy wrapper for data collaboration. So what that means is that the entire data collaboration is private, everything from data, the underlying data, the query, and the query response. And also for our specific protocol, the data stays where it is. So it's a federated protocol. We combine Web3 technologies and privacy-enhancing technologies, so we're really on the cutting edge. But there are a lot of folks in healthcare that are very, very interested in being able to protect their data. They want their data to stay where it is. They want to be able to own that data. And those conversations that we're having are with the pharmaceutical companies. It's with physician practices and with biotechnology companies. So the conversation is being had. They are aware of this technology, and it's really exciting. We've been in the space since 2016, so almost OG. I'd call that first tranche or second tranche OG. And the conversations were not the same back then. I think now the industry is ready to have these conversations. It's been really exciting.
So for you, you guys are you're not storing data in the blockchain itself. We're talking about data storage still in centralized silos, but you're really using blockchain to kind of fill those gaps and share that data with people who really need it, right?
Yeah, that's right. So for us, we want to be able to facilitate the connection between the analyst and the data provider. So we don't touch data at all. We don't store data on chain. You wouldn't want to do that anyway with healthcare data. It's super protected and private. And so the Web3 tech that we use is around data use and access policies. So how can we make sure that being able to access the data is more than just a pinky promise, because that's all that happens in healthcare right now is just like, I promise I'm not going to use your data like you tell me I'm not supposed to. But we don't know. We don't know if they actually delete the data. And so we provide more security around that.
That's fantastic. Michelle, you want to
Yeah.
share your story?
So I have a legal background by training. I used to be a counsel at the Office of Inspector General at the U.S. Department of State in D.C., where I focused a lot on efficiency of State Department operations and embassies overseas, including their security. And I was attracted to work with the DigiByte blockchain because of its developer steadfast focus on security from day one. In fact, in our Genesis block, the DigiByte blockchain references the Target hack in 2014. So I became fascinated with this blockchain that wanted to provide security in our newly emerging digital economy. And using my legal training, I formed a 501c3 to support its use and adoption, because there really isn't a lot of awareness around DigiByte, because it's been supported by worldwide volunteers for 10 years and never really had an ICO, so it doesn't have a treasury war chest to get its name out there for what it can do. Which, just a brief rundown, we are a Bitcoin derivative that has 15-second block times and multi-algorithmic mining. We use 5 mining algorithms instead of just 1. We have a real-time difficulty adjustment, which keeps the blockchain stable, and very low fees, and an asset layer, which can be used to tokenize anything in the world. So DigiByte has been used for doc storage purposes over the years. The one thing about a decentralized community, there's no company to kind of control its growth, but we have been used in international shipping tracking. Our founder was involved with the company early on in China, where it was basically a platform like DocuSign, but it was on the blockchain. And I don't believe that company is operational anymore. We've also been used to authenticate and certify a Rembrandt painting in 2019 at our DigiByte summit, and that was pretty cool. The Rembrandt painting was cut up into different pieces and then put onto our blockchain. And then also a Holland company called VID has used our blockchain to authenticate inspection reports from companies they service, including Amspec International, which produces like 50,000 inspection reports a month, to make sure that they're, fraud resistant and secure when they want to re-access them. They have since moved to a DAO ETH model, so they no longer use our blockchain for that purpose, unfortunately, but it was being used by them for a number of years. We also have an assets platform, which is very active in our community for art, and we have a larger block size than other blockchains, so you can fit things like video links and actual pictures in our NFTs. Also, we have a DigiID. It's an app where you can use, it's not decentralized storage directly, but it's a decentralized blockchain passwordless authentication app, which you can use to log in to access storage of documents in a decentralized way. And the keys are not stored centrally. They're guarded by our protocol through DigiByte keys, and it's not controlled by a central company. So you never have any identifying information online when you're logging in through our DigiID. So that DigiID can be used in conjunction with the assets layer to serve as a credential authentication method, where you to encrypt a Visa or a passport on our NFT layer, on our asset layer. You could then authenticate that using our DigiID app. And then I think that about covers what.
Yeah, those are
what
some great
you're-
use cases, and
Yeah.
it really kind of highlights the wide variety of things that this technology can do. What are we really solving for, I guess, when we're talking about using blockchain to store data? A lot of people, when they think of NFTs, think of art, but you've mentioned not only the Rembrandt painting, but things like passports and
Yeah.
important documents.
Yeah, I mean, I think any document can literally be hashed on either directly on our blockchain, which was what VID did, or through assets. And then, to prevent forgery and protect against fraud. I read some crazy article this week that the number attached to cybercrime this year will be $9.5 trillion. And so if cybercrime was a country, it would be the third largest economy in the world, behind the United States and China. So I
Wow.
feel like we really need to start researching and developing this technology at a higher level with more funding to be able to leverage the potential that I think it has through encrypting documents that are just out there floating in basically a non-private digital world that we live in.
Yeah, that's one thing that I see in the data space, looking at this for the last few years, working at blockchain startup operating in data as well, where there are such great benefits that can be achieved that we've seen in finance. And we can achieve benefits very similarly in data as well. And it's just one of those things that there isn't this understanding, and public perception has been kind of tainted, where things like your organization doesn't have the awareness, or people who do hear about it might not understand why it's important.
Right.
So I'm excited to talk more about that in a minute. John, do you want to share what you're doing?
Yeah. My name is John Gregis. I am the co-founder at Mozaik Labs. We focus on oracles. So if anybody doesn't know what oracles are, they're really the ability to bring off-chain data onto the blockchain to build applications in Web3. We strictly focus on the ZK part of that. So we are the first ZK oracle.
John, what is a ZK?
Zero knowledge proofs. So we utilize zero knowledge proof technology to scale oracles. So a little bit about my background. My co-founder and I both worked in the Chainlink ecosystem for over 3 years. We saw some of the pitfalls that were happening in the current Oracle market. And so what we wanted to do is scale that. How Chainlink and other oracles work, they do mostly aggregation or optimistical oracles to prove that something has happened, to bring that answer on chain. And so what we're trying to do is build something that scales from that, where instead of an aggregation of different of node operators, you can have as little as one operator to verifiably prove that something has happened. So if it be the price of Bitcoin, or if it be actual insurance data, you can have an operator run that and bring it on chain and verifiably prove the computation has happened to make sure that answer is correct.
That's great. So what are some use cases being utilized on your platform?
Oracles is, in general, everybody thinks of DEXs. So you use Uniswap. Back in DeFi summer, it was powered by Chainlink because it allowed price data to come on chain so people could trade. And so from there, the use cases are endless. I mean, you could actually do anything and bring anything on chain that you wanted to do. And so it's really up to the developer who has that really cool idea in Web3 that says, hey, I want to use X data. We find those data providers that provide that data and allow them to sell that data to that developer in the blockchain.
Thank you. So I just want to open the discussion. We've been in this space, all of us, for a number of years now and have seen it grown, like Kat mentioned. What do you see as kind of these big buckets of constraints and problems facing the adoption of blockchain for data management? I have a lot myself, but I'll leave it to you guys as the panelists.
For what? For debt management?
Data management. So I'd say education. So for us, we're on the healthcare side. So enterprise can be a stodgy industry. You know, if you're outside the industry, we love it in the industry, but it's a bit of a difficult conversation when you start talking about oracles. Like Oracle, the company, like no, totally different. Like this is actually being able to bring data on chain because data it functionally can't do that on the blockchain, and there's just it feels very complicated to them, and so there's a level of education that's necessary and needed. What's interesting, though, is all of the enterprise companies that we're speaking with have a blockchain innovator in-house. So Johnson & Johnson has one, UCB has one, AstraZeneca, all these companies are looking at the technology, they're educating themselves, but there is still a little bit of a gap around the knowledge and what it means, and that can be very scary to an enterprise that wants to play it safe, but also knows that they need to push the envelope a little bit in terms of innovation.
So one thing that I've looked at with blockchain in healthcare specifically is the incentives kind of around for these larger companies. You know, they're operating at such scale and have such influence and resources when we're talking about the regulatory environment. What do you see in that with like adoption, and why, you know, they have these innovators in-house, but why aren't they? Is it something with like the fact that, you know, they want to maintain their little empire of data? How do you look at that? Yeah,
so that's an interesting question because there was just recently a consortium of pharmaceutical companies that formed. Each have their own data. It's a federated model, so a federated AI model. But they have not been able to share access to their data really until now. And a lot of the reason is because Web3 has been developing. It's been all about DEXs, all about DeFi. Which just doesn't fit healthcare. That's not the use case. The other side of it is when you're talking about privacy-enhancing technologies, HE, FHE, or homomorphic encryption, multi-party computation, trusted execution environments, those also have just crusted in terms of availability for the business side. It used to be too expensive to implement, and now it's becoming feasible. So when you bring these together, and then of course you sprinkle in a little AI because everyone loves buzzwords, then you can start to create the consortiums that you're talking about, which is how do they actually leverage their data for the partnerships. Now they can do it in a safe way, they can monetize it. And what's really cool is that because it's the way that you can build a blockchain is immutability, you can assign IP to that. So let's say a drug comes up from this consortium, you can share the IP among the participants. In our system, you can actually know exactly where a particular data piece came from at the patient level, and you can also share down to the patient. So they are testing these. A lot of it is in-house, and they don't talk about it. They don't want to broadcast it, also because it's incredibly competitive. Specifically in the pharmaceutical sector, it's all about who can get IP first, so they're not going to broadcast it. This particular consortium, they did broadcast because they are way ahead of everybody else. But it's just now that the technology is available, it's inexpensive enough, and they feel, because they had the in-house expertise, now they feel comfortable implementing it.
That's very interesting, and it's exciting that we're at that kind of almost inflection point. I'm hoping, anyway, right? Soon it's going to happen, but it's just very exciting to be at this kind of forefront here, where we're seeing this happening, and we all know it's happening, but it's kind of happening in this really quiet way in the background. And I've seen that in private conversations in finance. People are moving rails of blockchain. Billions of dollars is being moved, but it's not something that everyone's shouting from the rooftops.
Right.
So hopefully we see more of that going forward.
Yeah, monetization is a big topic now, just because data is oil. I mean, it's extremely profitable, and I think it's education with Web 2 to say there are a lot of people that want to build applications in the blockchain, but they need that data to do that, and they're willing to pay a lot of money for that. And so if we can educate these bigger, larger Web 2 companies, data providers, to say, hey, you might want to think about using someone to provide that data onto the blockchain so users can use it. I mean, it's extremely profitable for them.
So, John, to follow up with that, do you have any tips or advice for people listening to do that, to go to these companies and say, hey, here's what you can look at?
I think with any company, a lot of on the technical side, it's always going to be bottom up. You need to educate some of the engineers that are on these teams. Some of these companies do have blockchain engineering teams or some kind of smaller conjunction of people that do research in this. But it's really, I guess, for our side, Mozaik is educating these companies to say, hey, this is possible. Because a lot of people don't know this yet. They don't even know that blockchains exist or need this data, because when they think of blockchain, they think of, okay, yeah, you can use an API and this block can get this information, but it's not. That's not true. And so you need to have this middleware to be able to provide that data, and now just educate the Web 2 companies to say, hey, there are a lot of people that want to use this. Let's think about providing this data in this way.
So, John, you did mention, too, that you were at Chainlink and have a good understanding with you and your founder of that space. Would you want to touch on, we're talking about constraints here, what was going on with them and why you guys are different?
Yeah, so the biggest difference from us is when we were working in that ecosystem, you really see the ability that it does not scale. A lot of people don't know this, but they have many, many node operators. They pick and choose and whitelist their node operators, and that kind of right there is the initial bottleneck, where not everybody can then become a node operator to prove this data and get paid to do that. The other downfall is they have to subsidize all these feeds. And so when you have this new data feed, or you're a new project and you have your token, if you want to get a data feed for that, you're going to have to pay a lot of money, or you'll never get it, or wait in line for years. And so we see that as a scaling problem, not just for Web 2, but also Web 3, that people aren't going to make applications if they're not going to have the data available. So we want to have anybody become a node operator. We want it to be an actual trustless system where if you have any knowledge in infrastructure and you say, hey, I want to run one of these operators to get paid to do this, you can. You should be able to do that. Well, we're in a decentralized world. We want to be completely decentralized. And so, what we're trying to solve at Mozaik is the Oracle problem still exists, but we want to make it a little bit easier that anybody can now, almost like a marketplace of operators and users, where users say, hey, I really want this data. If it's insurance data, I really need this data. Then you get somebody on the other side who's the data provider that says, hey, I have this data. I want to provide this now. And as an operator, the operator is that middleware that says, okay, I'm going to run this data, bring it to the user, and get paid to do that.
I'm going to serve you another user example from healthcare.
Yep.
So in healthcare, on the hospital side, there was a law that went into play about 2 years ago where hospitals are required to be transparent about how much they're going to charge you. They do a really good job of burying that information on their website. This would be a great example use case of an Oracle, especially when you're talking about how we're leveraging this data, and eventually people could use this for reimbursement for healthcare or insurance coverage. But there is one single data point. There is one hospital, and it is the price of that procedure at that hospital. It is not the case that same procedure at the hospital down the road is the exact same price. So the multiple oracles trying to average a price would not work in healthcare. So if there's a way to be able to say, this is the price at Yale New Haven Health System, guaranteed hip replacement, proven data from Medicare, from the website, this is the Oracle, proven, bring it to the blockchain, that is an excellent use case.
Absolutely.
We looked at Chainlink, and it didn't fit the use case for healthcare. There just aren't multiple data points to be able to use to aggregate to put an answer on chain.
Absolutely. That was a good point.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance in this space when it comes to the technology, and we can say blockchain, but it's a big umbrella, right?
Yeah.
With that said, one thing John mentioned was the word decentralized. Michelle, do you want to touch on the difference between privatized blockchain and a truly public decentralized chain?
Sure. Yeah, I think public blockchains definitely need to be at the forefront of the next generation in the digital economy to the extent that they can, given the privacy of certain data, because of the fact that they do provide the worldwide node, security. And I don't really think that private blockchains provide the same amount of security because they can't, because they're, essentially centrally controlled by certain people. So you have a trust problem, and you don't, when the nodes go down within that centralized server, you don't have access to the data. And public blockchains are censorship resistant because of the lack of control in the private blockchains are not. There's a lot of public mistrust of public blockchains, and I'm not sure why. There's just not a comfort level in using them yet in the market. And I think that might have to do with the fact that some of the top chains frequently go down. I don't know why that is, but they do. Solana being one. I don't know. I'm hoping that it goes that way. Interestingly, the Senate Armed Services Committee just sent a letter to DoD saying that we have to figure out how to use blockchain for national security. And for me, a public blockchain is a public utility for the public benefit, and it should be supported by government funding. And, that's how the internet started. The government really got behind it and promoted it and supported it at the beginning because there's frankly nobody to profit off public blockchains at the beginning because they don't have that infrastructure support. So that's one of our challenges, and that's why we started the 501c3 to get awareness out there about our blockchain. And it's one of the rare blockchains where security, decentralization, and speed coexist. And there's all these layer 2 efforts going on out there with Bitcoin and more prominent blockchains to achieve the functionality that we have. It's just nobody knows about us.
Yeah.
So
it's a tough spot to be in, and it could be tough to be sitting and waiting and hoping for more government buy-in, right? Because with this data space that we're in, so many countries see it as a challenge, right?
Yeah.
I want my data in my country. Saudi Arabia, for example, has laws on the books that you can't have a permissionless public chain because they want that data to be stored in Saudi Arabia. And so we have those issues and the national security issues that come with financial problems. When you're looking at the future, Michelle, how are you kind of conceptualizing where this is all going? And if you're comfortable, all of you guys, please feel free to put some time and dates out here, because we like to say in the blockchain space, maybe next year. But I'm curious what you guys, if you're willing to commit to some sort of 5-year, 10-year mark.
I mean, I think Mitch Ford, I think his name is, from MIT Media Labs, I think that's where he's from, said that private blockchains are the intranet and public blockchains are the internet. And we're kind of at that stage of development in the space where we're still in the intranet land and in dial-up stage. So I'm hoping within 5 years we're starting to see more migration in public space to public blockchains, and that's why we built our infrastructure to support that. I definitely think that public blockchains obviously provide more accessibility for people who are in financially disadvantaged populations to contribute to the new digital economy. There's no barriers to entry. Anybody with access to GitHub and a computer can get on and code and contribute. And that's what I love about DigiByte. One of our main contributors right now is a 22-year-old from Peru who just found DigiByte and has been contributing all these apps and just coding left and right, and the community loves them. And that's what I want to see. I want to see a more, open and accessible economy for people, and open source, decentralized public blockchains are definitely the way I think future economic innovation will happen in our country. I think history has shown that, reducing barriers to entry is a positive thing for democracy and innovation and maintaining freedom. And, open censorship-resistant platforms are the best way to get there.
Thank you. Just want to pause quick. Do you two want to answer that question, or would you rather open this up to a Q&A? With our 5-minute warning here.
There's questions? Yeah, we can
From the
take
audience?
questions.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not all at once.
So I'm curious, with the data storage, is there any consideration or possible, like, where do you think the future of data will lay in regards to either pinning or permaweb? Permaweb or pinning data?
Pinning data, like
Or
dpin?
versus like permaweb, is there any, the future of holding the actual data?
Like Arweave?
Yeah.
Like real permanent? So I think, again, I'm coming from the healthcare perspective, very different, very traditional trad health, whatever. I think it depends on the data source. Because it depends on, so for healthcare, for example, it's not that helpful to have data kind of in a history, kind of in an Arweave archetype, if you will. It's more helpful to have a living and breathing document that is updated regularly, almost like your health record, contributing in from different places, different locations, a really fluid document. So for us, we've looked from the healthcare perspective, looked into companies like Arweave with permanent data storage, and we just haven't seen anything there yet. But that's just from the healthcare perspective. I think for us, it's more around living data. The data needs to stay where it is, being able to access it, prove that the data is what it is, prove that it's unchanged in a certain way, that it wasn't tampered with by someone that wasn't supposed to have access to the health record. So that's from our perspective. But I would turn it over to them to.
Yeah, I think
their
it ends up
perspective.
coming down to what type of data are you talking about? Is it sensitive data? Is it public data? At Chainlink, they're building CCIP, which allows for traditional banking to have their own internal blockchains to pass messages back and forth between the public ledgers or banking to public. And so I think it ends up coming down to what type of data are you talking about? Is it security? Is it sensitive data? I love IPFS. Arweave is great, but do I see that happening anytime soon? No, until some type of encryption comes that's
Right.
good enough.
To that point as well, it's very hard to work with these tools at this time. So Ceramic is a great tool on top of IPFS, but even then, there are still leaps that these technologies have to make that we're used to in data storage, in cloud storage, if you will, that they just haven't thought of or haven't figured out. Data deletion is a big one. Data deletion is a requirement. Under HIPAA, it's a requirement under GDPR, and with those tools, you actually can't be compliant with that. So that's something to think about too, is that regulatory aspect of it.
I just want to add, not only are you not in compliance, you are permanently in compliance,
Yeah,
right?
literally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where you're required to legally take it down.
Right.
And
we've explored
You
the
can't.
code, we talked to the team, and they say it's coming, but they haven't addressed those gaps yet that I think kind of, like you were saying, kind of move us to the future there.